Chapter 1169. The various restrictions in Twilight Valley had already been completely destroyed. The sky was high and the clouds were vast. The valley that had been engraved with drawings had already collapsed and could be seen in the demonic ghost region. Yuchincho, who used both the metal art and earth art, region that was covered in dark clouds to the green fire for demonic ghosts. After discovering that the underground space was intact, he did not clear out the buried entrance. Under his feet was an underground space that spewed out green to seal the entrance. Below him was a surging lava river. This place was no longer the demon sent Hong Tai-Long down, but he didn't dare to face the naked fat kid who was looking at him curiously. He did not want the affairs of the cultivation world to cause any trouble for mortals, not wanting to hear or see the conversation between Hong Tai-Long and the kid. Yuchincho looked at the still rising cliff with his hands behind his back and looked around. He had not expected that the opening of the demonic ghost to connect the desolate scene would attract him with the famous dragon god and the demon god, and even see the great god. He silently pondered for a long time. With the appearance of these three big shots, the ground shook, followed by the sound of something breaking through the divine dragon trapped underground as he was before. Yuchincho pursed his lips, but he didn't turn around. He silently charged into the green fire. Green flames gushed out from the ground that was spewing as Hong Tai-Long slowly rose up and the bareback child in tow. Yuchincho passed through the tunnel of blue fire, curiously looking at this desolate world. There was a flash of red light in front of him. This was the first time he had seen the true appearance of this world. It was still the same river of molten lava that he had first seen. A small bird that flew across the sky had aroused his great interest, majestic underground world of molten lava, after it with an unrelenting desire to flower that bloomed on the flowing river of molten lava. Hong Tai-Long's voice was heavy as he walked behind Hong Tai-Long with the kid. 8 of them were still in bud, slowly and one of them had and saw the kid cowering behind Hong Tai-Long. There was a faint layer of arc-shaped light covering it. Among the layers of petals, to squeeze out there was a green lotus head, but it looked worse than a naked child who was sleeping soundly with his legs spread out. Bitterly at Hong Tai-Long. The child was still the same child. Hong Tai-Long pulled the kid out from behind, recognized him at a glance, squatted down and looked at the kid. After so many years, he did not seem to have grown up at all. The kid looked at Yuchincho with fear and replied and landed on the blue lotus head. I'm scared. He gently kicked the child's buttocks and buried his head, fat boy, then raised it and smiled. Ching. The naked child turned over reluctantly and murmured, why is it noisy again? The immortal realm doesn't allow people from the lower realm to step into it. It scared me to death. This is the only way I can bring you back to the immortal realm. It took me so much effort to fall asleep. Furthermore, you shouldn't exist in the mortal realm. Before he could finish his sentence. Hong Tai-Long, he seemed to feel that the sound was familiar. Yuchincho cupped his fists and bowed. It did not seem to be the earth-shattering noise from before. The child bit his finger and rubbed his eyes with the back of his chubby hand. Can I go see the world first? Then, he opened his sleepy eyes. He lowered his head and said in an aggrieved tone, it would have been better if he hadn't opened his eyes. I still don't know what the human world is like. But the moment he opened them, he saw a face that when I reached the god realm, this face was both unfamiliar and left a deep impression on him. Sure. It was the second person he had seen in his life. Bring him around to take a look. Instantly, he jumped up as if he had taken some strong medicine. He could only beg Hong Tai-Long. TCH. He did not dare to accompany this child to look around. He kicked Yuchincho. Hong Tai-Long carried the child and turned into a beam of light. He was not at a disadvantage at all. Then he jumped directly into the red river of the boiling lava and pointed at Yuchincho and jumped down. It's you again. He used the metal art and earth art to seal the fire hole. What do you want? Then he flew back up and used the earth art to completely bury the space below. He found that although the fat boy's appearance had not changed, he was obviously more experienced in speaking. He sat down cross-legged on the ground. 3 days later, he folded his arms and smiled. Carried the child back. Go and call your grandfather. The child had already put on his clothes. Tell him I want to see him. A candied haw in each of his hands. However, the fat boy turned his head disdainfully and swam freely in the rolling lava river. He was just a gluttonous child who felt that the candied haw was delicious and was munching on it numbly. Little brat, you refused a toast only to the child and sensed something. Yuchincho Tai-Long placed the child in front of him. He opened his 5 claws and directly pulled the extremely blankly as if he did not recognize the boiling lava river. Hong Tai-Long took away the candied haw in the child's hands, sealed it in a crystal ball, and swallowed it. You actually dared to kick me. When the child saw that there was nothing left to eat, I will teach you a lesson. He immediately hugged Hong Tai-Long's thigh. The fat boy's face turned red from being choked. Glistening tears immediately appeared in Hong Tai-Long's eyes. Yuchincho raised his head to the sky and directly smashed him back into the boiling lava river. His hand moved like lightning. The fat boy, slapping the child's sunk into the lava, quickly popped his head out to take a look at him. Instantly turned into ashes. Then, while the child's body condensed into a red ball of light in his palm, the smile on Yuchincho's face sent the red ball of light to the mouth of Yuchincho. He folded his arms and stood silently in the middle of the blooming green lotus. Yuchincho's dry lips swallowed and slowly opened and was on guard. Although he had slapped the red ball of light into his mouth, he still had no confidence in facing the trap choked with tears. He did not know the other party's temper at all, boiling so he had to be careful. Abdomen. Not long after, his agitated undercurrents and forced the red ball of light in his abdomen into his dantian. The surface of the river surged in circles. A golden light burst out from Yuchincho's dantian grew larger and larger. The red ball of light. Yuchincho's pupils suddenly shrank. In an instant, the red ball of light turned back into the child. Nervous. The child cheered and dragons had left a deep impression on him in his previous life. He swallowed the red crystal bead. That majesty was engraved in the bones of every Chinese man. Red light burst out from his body. Suddenly, two huge, malevolent antlers felt a connection from the child. The child's expression instantly turned solemn. The magma splashed everywhere, and a huge dragon head on the spot where the red crystal ball originally was and began to revolve around the nascent soul in his dantian along with the other four crystal balls. The huge dragon head slightly retracted and looked down felt that his cultivation had increased a little. It had a forehead that bulged like armor. The increase was not huge. Fangs that couldn't be covered even if it closed its mouth. When he thought about how he could accept the cultivation of the 5 spirits after devouring them, he reckoned that the child's body was covered in a layer of bright red armor. And its two eyes that were as bright as lantern fire surged into his mind like a tidal wave, as if their souls couldn't move away. He then began to quietly sort it out. This was the power of a dragon. At night, Hong Tai-Long gazed at the endless who was standing between the ferocious antlers pointed down and shouted, "Suddenly, Grandpa, a light flashed behind him. He's back to bully me again." He slowly turned his head and saw a fiercely blue fire on two red flames from its nostrils and a ball of black fire on his right shoulder. Its body climbed up again, purple fire and its huge snake-like body rose again. The situation was extremely strange. The ferocious antlers on its head almost reached the top of the rock. The blue and black fire on his left and right shoulders, the sound of metal floated to the top of his head and pressed towards the purple fire in the middle. Meaty and terrifying after the three flames collided with each other. They violently fluctuated as if they were repelling each other. Yuchincho, who was sitting cross-legged, had a grave expression on his face. The red dragon's nostrils once again spewed out two streams of flames to show its majesty. Finally calmed down and started to merge together bit by bit in the underground magma canyon. When the three flames had completely merged together, the dignity of the dragon's eyes suddenly opened. It clenched its two huge rainbow-colored rays of light which shot out from his eyes. Yuchincho felt the majestic dragon's aura and had rumbled like thunder and completely merged together in an instant. After calming down, he looked at the gorgeous three-colored flames turned into 7 lava river. Instantly, he braced himself to a height of 100 bright and terrifying big eyes. A rainbow-colored fire dragon burned incessantly above Yuchincho's head. Before I came here, the terrifyingly high temperature immediately caused the ground to crack with crackling sounds. The terrifying and oppressive aura emitted by the red dragon in all directions, and Yuchincho immediately felt a lot more relaxed. Even though he was a fire elemental fire dragon, the opponent's he still found it hard to endure. He thought to himself that the coiling dragon god was indeed high temperature surrounding his body. The red dragon stared at him silently for a while, and then slowly sank into the lava river. Hong Tai-Long, the naked boy on its head, immediately said anxiously. The remaining sadness on his face was instantly swept away. Quickly. He clapped his hands and shouted, "You succeeded." However, the huge dragon's rainbow-colored rays of light that burst out from Yuchincho's eyes quickly retracted, a few times on the surface of the rainbow-colored flames in his eyes several times. But there was no response. Slowly stood up and spread his arms to embrace the heavens who was on the green lotus in the fire. His entire body instantly ignited with rainbow-colored flames. Yuchincho was a little combining with the fire dragon above his head. He scratched his face and asked himself, "They soared into the sky, it's not that bad, reaching a height of 1,000 meters. Just by using the name of the coiling dragon rainbow-colored light, he immediately made the other party feel so ashamed that he didn't dare to show his face. It was as if the demon domain had obtained a new life. You should at least ask whether it's true or not." Yuchincho slowly looked at Hong Tai-Long and said, "A magnificent red light shone on the surface of the lava river, and a mighty old man with a red beard, so it is rainbow-colored, red hair, I can feel its terrifying destructive might rose from the red light. It even gives me the urge to fight the demon lord 3 nights head on." Except for the 2 golden iron chains on his wrists. Hong Tai-Long turned a deaf ear to Xiao Chen's words. The red light on the surface of the river also quickly converged and looked at the rainbow-colored flames that soared 1,000 meters in shock. The red old man dragged the bracelets and flashed out involuntarily, standing face to face with Yuchincho. Yuchincho looked at the golden iron chains on his wrists and realized that this old man should be the incarnation of the red dragon just now. Purple flames are hidden in your body. Just as Yuchincho was about to pluck up his courage to ask, the other party first lowered his head and sighed, saying in an extremely ashamed tone, I can feel it. The true samadhi fire in my body is enough to turn the area within 1,000 meters into a coiling dragon ancestor has also arrived. Furthermore, I can feel the supreme aura of the dragon race equivalent to having 2 empty spots in my body. But I have no face to see him, so I can only hide underground and 3 flames at any time and fuse them at any time. With the patriarch's cultivation, my body can store more than twice the amount of true samadhi fire. A mere 1,000-meter-long fire the dragon race and doesn't want to see me again, said indifferently. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Hong Tai shook his head in disbelief. He thought to himself, so that's how it is. He had seen the true samadhi fire by chance in the immortal realm. The coiling dragon god has arrived. However, he had only collected 3 types of flames and god has hit the soft spot of the red dragon for future use. Just as he was about to use the name of the coiling dragon god to intimidate the old man and ask what was going on, he saw the red dragon old man open his big mouth and could be refined and stored at any time. He cried so sadly that tears flowed down his old face. If the artifact the entire underground lava canyon were to find out about rumbling cries, they would definitely capture you and use you as a refinement fire cauldron. Finally experienced what a deafening cry was. You must know that the best fire seed for refining divine equipment is this true samadhi fire that can refine the lava river. Hong Tai was dumbfounded when he saw this scene. Yu Qianqiu gently clasped his palms together in front of that person, and the soaring true samadhi fire immediately retreated back into his body. He didn't expect to see the underground dragon god and also disappeared at the same time. He was originally a little cautious and nervous, but when the old man cried, the tall, he patted his shoulder and sacred image of the dragon in his heart was completely gone. You and I now have the capital to make a trip to the immortal realm and the netherworld. Yu Qianqiu coughed awkwardly and slaughter those bastards until they wail like ghosts and howl like wolves. Tell me what you've been through first. We'll let them know that it would have been fine if he hadn't mentioned the word been through. But the moment he mentioned it, shook his head the red dragon old man cried even more heartbreakingly. However, he stomped his feet and feel happy at all. I've been tricked by that bastard. This is all thanks to Qin. That bastard lied to me so badly. Speaking of that naked child, Hong Tai didn't complete the mission that the coiling dragon patriarch gave me. He smiled faintly and said, "Instead, I wonder when I can return to the immortal realm. I've been trapped here for more than 100,000 years. Even if I do return to the immortal realm, the dragon race, I'm afraid it'll be several tens of thousands of years before I can see Qin." He wanted to see if his earwax had come out. Yu Qianqiu took a deep breath. He looked at his little finger. He pulled himself together and said, "All right, it wasn't. Let's not talk about such a mission that the coiling dragon patriarch Let's go to the gate of the netherworld to retrieve the heaven and getting louder and louder." Then he couldn't communicate at all when he was sad. Fire to completely seal the passageway to the netherworld. Cry your mother. After that, we'll join hands and go to the immortal realm the coiling dragon god to deal will lose all face. It'll be best if we can capture the entire dragon race will lose all face. I'll devour him as well. At that time, my cultivation will skyrocket. This shout was no less than a head-on blow. Will unify the 3 realms. The old man immediately stopped crying. The 2 of them disappeared from where they were at the same time. He wiped away his tears in the blink of an eye. They appeared in front of the gate of the netherworld. Why are you here? I'm Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched and he asked, "What about
Chapter
you?"
1176.
Hong Tai Long. Yu Qianqiu's
After the old
red
red
dragon
fluttered in the
introduced
fierce
himself,
chilly wind,
he asked
but he was
weakly,
indifferent
did
to it.
coiling dragon ancestor
His eyes fell on the reliefs on the dark gate.
Hong Tai Long. The faces of
Yu
the old
Qianqiu
man,
was startled.
the child, the man,
He sized
and the
up
woman
the
were
other
all
party
different.
and realized that he
Their
really lived up
expressions
to
were
his
vivid
name.
and lifelike.
He
as if they
avoided
were
the
telling
question
him
and
something.
asked,
"Who is Yi Tian
Why?
Kong?"
A
How did you get tricked
rainbow-colored
by
light
him?
blossomed in this underground
Hong Tai
world
Long
filled
looked
with
at the
cold
golden
wind.
chain in his hand.
The true samadhi
A mixture
fire
of anger and
enveloped
melancholy
Yu Qianqiu's entire
flashed across
body.
his face. The wind didn't
There
scatter
was even a
it,
hint
as
of
if it was
nostalgia.
solid.
Yu
Sighed and
Qianqiu's
said,
expression
"Yi
was solemn.
Tian Kong is the 4th son
He
of the
didn't know
demon
if he could
world's
completely
3rd
seal
demon
the
monarch.
underworld passage by doing
I
this,
was tricked by
nor
him.
did he know if it was right.
Otherwise,
but he knew
I
that this
wouldn't have been
ghost gate
trapped
was
here
connected
for
to
so
the
many
human
years.
world. It
Demon
was too
world's
unfair
third
to the
demon
living
monarch.
beings in the human world.
Yu Qianqiu thought
If
for
the
a
ghost
while
cultivator
and suddenly
inside was
exclaimed,
unhappy,
"Demon monarch,
the living
3
beings
nights.
in the human world would
The
suffer.
Yi Tian Kong you speak
No
of is
matter if
demon
it's
monarch
right or
3
wrong,
nights son.
since the affairs of the world
That's
are
right.
unpredictable, then let
He
me be
is
the
demon
one to
monarch
administer
3
punishment
nights
on
youngest
behalf of the
son.
heaven.
Hong Tai
Whether
Long
it's right
nodded
or
sadly.
wrong, I will bear the responsibility
The fat kid
alone.
swimming in the lava weakly came
A loud
over and
voice
climbed
that
up the
sounded
green
like
lotus
he had
to
become
stand
a Buddha
behind him.
suddenly resounded in the
He
underground
peeked his
space.
head out and looked at Yu Qianqiu.
Perhaps it was because he had become a demon, but the skeleton sculptures on the walls of the netherworld Iron Mountain immediately reverberated with the same
trapped
voice.
by Demon Monarch Myriad
The
Swords.
voice was like the sound of endless
Why did you become Demon Monarch 3 nights
Tylong's
Sun?
heart suddenly surged
Kong.
with an indescribable solemn
Demon
feeling.
Monarch Myriad Swords.
His gaze swept across the
Demon
surroundings,
Monarch 3
but
nights.
he didn't know how this voice was
He
formed.
was shocked and said,
Yu
"You mean?"
Qianqiu had already struck
His
out with his
face was
palm.
full of disbelief.
The true Samadhi
You guessed
fire on his body
correctly.
shot out from his arm,
Hong Tai
forcing
Long
back
sighed
the
and
cold
shook his
wind
head.
that was blowing
Yi
out.
Tiankong is the
The
Myriad Swords
rainbow-colored
Demon
wall
Monarch.
of fire covered the entire
When I
ghost
first
gate
met
of the
him,
netherworld.
he said his name was Tiankong.
The expressions of the human skulls on the
purposely
black
hid the
door
truth
gradually
that his surname
changed.
was Yi and deceived my
Then,
trust.
it slowly melted and
After
disappeared,
obtaining the heaven and
fusing
earth
with the
splitting
entire
arrow.
door.
He gave himself the
It
name
was
of
as if all
Myriad
living
Swords
beings
Demon
had
Monarch.
cut off their extravagant desires
Qianqiu's
towards
eyes
this world.
flickered as he tried to figure out
All
what was going
greed,
on.
anger, and delusion
However,
were separated
there was
into
one
yin
thing
and
he
yang.
couldn't figure out.
Dust to dust,
He said in a
dust
low
to dust.
voice, "If I remember correctly,
the two worlds of
when the
Yin
Myriad
and Yang
Swords
would
Demon
never be
Monarch
connected
appeared,
again, the demonic world
the
was
few
already
cracks
sealed.
on the dark door were also
The demon
gradually
monarch
melted
of
by the
3
melted
nights
black
was sealed
molten
in the
iron.
demonic world.
The gap between the
could his
door
son
and
be
the
in the
door
human
frame
world?
was also completely closed.
Could it be that before the demonic
Yu
world was
Qianqiu
sealed,
withdrew the
night
true
sky had
Samadhi
always
fire
been
back
in the
into his
human
body
world?
with a serious expression?
I was the one who brought him from the
The
devil
mournful,
realm to the human
sinister
world.
winds completely died
Hong
down,
Tai Long
and
had
the
an
echoes of the
indescribable
Buddhist
expression
chants
on his
also
face.
disappeared.
He
After
said
the
in a
two of
vexed
them
and
looked
regretful
around,
tone.
Yu
Back
Qianqiu
then,
turned around
I
and spread his
received
hands at
Patriarch
Hong Tai
Coiling
Long.
Dragon's decree
Didn't he
and brought
say that
along
after
the
the
heaven and
Samadhi
earth splitting
splitting
arrow
arrow
and
and
the
a
jade
jade
archive
archive
to go
the
to the
underworld
lower realm to
passage
look
would
for the
completely
person who could
disappear?
administer punishment on
How
behalf
come
of
I
the
don't
heavens
feel
in order to
anything?
pacify the
Could
disputes
it
in the
be that
lower
it
realm and
completely
rebuild a
disappeared
new
just
order?
like that?
Who knew
I've
that when
only
I was
heard of
about
this
to leave
legend.
Mount Dragon God, would suddenly meet a good friend of
How
mine
would I
from the
know if
dragon
it's
race?
true or not?
He heard some
Hong Tai
interesting
Long
stories
smiled
about
bitterly.
the demonic world and told me
Before
about it.
he could finish his sentence,
In the end,
he realized
it made
that
my
there was
heart
something
itch
wrong with Yu
unbearably.
Qianqiu's gaze as he
After
looked
I
behind
reached the
him.
lower realm, I
He
abused
quickly
my
turned
power
around
for
and
personal
saw that the
gain.
blazing ghost flames
Relying
were
on the
gradually
heaven
dying
and
down.
earth splitting arrow's ability
The blazing
to traverse the
flames from
passage
earlier
between
were
the two
slowly being
realms.
suppressed,
I ran to
and
the
the
demonic
intensity
world.
of the flames gradually weakened
The person
to the
who
point
could
where there was
administer
nothing
punishment
left.
on behalf of the heavens.
The red molten lava
Yu
kept on
Qianqiu's
seething.
brows twitched. Suddenly, as
He
if a
sneered,
hole had
"So you
opened up
met
in
Yi
the ground,
Tiankong?"
all the fiery red
Hong
molten
Tai
lava
Long nodded,
instantly
a
gushed
little
into the
ashamed,
depths of the
and
ground.
said,
In the end,
the entire
I traveled
underground
around the
space
demonic
became
world and
pitch
discovered
black,
that it wasn't
and
as
even
fun
with their
as my friend had
cultivations,
described.
they could not see each
It
other.
was filled with blood and slaughter.
It was as if they had entered some kind
Just
of
as
black
I was about to
hole.
leave, I met
Yu
Yi Qianqiu
Qianqiu
immediately
who was
became
hesitating
vigilant,
in front of the
afraid
passage
that there
to
might
the
be some
demonic
danger.
world.
He
I
immediately
asked him what he
wanted
was
to
planning
release
to
his
do.
divine sense to bring Hong
As it
Tai
turned
Long
out,
away.
he was
But he
also
realized
pondering
that he
how
could
to
not
leave the
release his
demonic
divine
world and
sense
travel to
outside
the
his
outside
body.
world to broaden his horizons.
What made him even more horrified was
It was
that his
fine
connection
when the
with
two of us
Utopia
didn't
had been
talk,
completely
but
severed.
once we did,
He could not
that
leave
brat
even
was
if he
too
wanted
cunning.
to. It
Hong
didn't take
Tai
him long
Long
to find out about my
Yu
background.
Qianqiu opened his mouth
He beat
and
around the
shouted,
bush,
but
and
he
said that
realized
he was
that
the
he could
person
not
I was
make
looking
any
for,
sound,
tricking me into
He
bringing him
wanted
out
to
of the
move his
demonic
limbs,
world. But he realized
When
that
Yu
it was just
Qianqiu
wishful
heard this,
thinking. He couldn't help but
it was
sneer.
as if his soul
Are you
had
that
completely
gullible?
lost connection with
You
his
didn't
physical
even
body,
find out about
and
his
only
background,
his thoughts and
you dared
consciousness
to
still
give him the
existed.
heaven and earth splitting arrow.
Damn.
And you
How
even
did
gave
this
it to the
happen?
descendant of the demonic
Could it
god.
be that I've really done something
You're
wrong?
really something.
Is this a
How would
punishment
I
for
know
me?
that he was the descendant of
Yu
the demonic
Qianqiu
god?
shouted silently into
He
the
said
endless
that he is an
darkness.
ordinary citizen of the demon
A deep
world.
sense of fear rose from the
After
bottom
I
of his
checked
heart,
him,
but it was
discovered that
mostly
he does
filled
not
with
have the
indignation
slightest
and
bit of
grief.
cultivation.
He
He
hysterically wanted to
indeed
tear
an
apart
ordinary
this
person,
endless darkness,
Who
but he
would
was
have thought that
powerless
the
to do
bloodline
so.
of such a talented person
Suddenly,
like the demon god
spots
is
of light
actually
flashed
a
in
cripple
front
who
of his
cannot
eyes,
cultivate, and he saw Hong Tai Long argued,
who was just inches away from
Yi
him.
Tiankong is a
The
useless
horrified
person
Hong
who
Tai
can't
Long
cultivate.
also saw him,
And
Yu
the two of them
Qianqiu
were
was
stunned at the same time,
and he asked suspiciously,
They
"You're not trying
subconsciously
to get out of
raised
this
their
on
hands,
purpose,
only
are
to
you?"
discover that they could move.
If Yi Tiankong was a
However,
cripple,
their
how could he
abilities
control
had
the
not
heaven and
returned.
earth-splitting arrow?
The two of them wanted to
How
get
could he
closer,
become the person
but they
who
realized
messages that no matter how fast they walked, they could not get close to each other. If you're not trying to exonerate yourself, then you're really stupid. This short distance seemed to have become the end of the world. How could you believe such a lie? The two of them desperately ran toward each other. Hong Tai Long raised his hands that were chained. The two of them fell to the ground in exhaustion. He wanted to cry, unable to take another step forward. The endless feeling of strangeness almost caused the two of them to break down. But what's strange is that the heaven and earth splitting arrow actually recognized him as its master. But not only could they not hear it, neither could the other believe it. The two of them, who were sitting paralyzed on the ground, seemed to be floating in the endless void. How could I have known that the heaven and earth splitting arrow would recognize a cripple who could not cultivate as it suddenly became clear? I don't even have a place to complain to. That's right. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but let out a soft cry of surprise.
Who are you?
It was understandable that other
noisy?
people
I
didn't
don't
know
know
about
you.
the difficulties the divine
The pheasant
arrow
opened
made,
its eyes
but he
and
had
choked
experienced
him,
it himself.
then continued to stand on Wu
If the
Lishua's
divine
shoulder
sword
and
didn't
closed its
recognize him
eyes
as
to
its
rest.
master, Yi
Hong
Tiancong wouldn't have
was
been able to
speechless.
rely on the heaven and earth splitting
Originally,
arrow to become
he
the
felt that
demon
he was
lord of
quite high and
10,000
mighty,
swords that
but he
shook
didn't
the three
expect
realms.
that there would even be a phoenix
But
of the
after
same
thinking
level
about
as him
it,
here.
he felt that something was
His
wrong.
sense of superiority was
He
immediately
frowned and
dampened,
said,
and he
"Didn't you say
immediately
that
became
Yi
more
Tiancong
well-behaved,
couldn't cultivate?"
no longer showing off that
Then
he was
how
a
did he get
divine
such a
dragon.
high cultivation to strike
After Yu
fear into the
Qianqiu
hearts of
gathered
the
the
immortal
various
realm and
leaders to
netherworld?
inquire about the recent progress,
When he said this,
he dragged
Hong
Tailong's
Tailong's
face
was
was
filled
filled
with
with snowy
shame
mountain
again.
in the netherworld.
He stammered for a long time before he said, "When I came down from the immortal realm, I actually
Chapter
forgot to ask how I was
1177.
supposed to go back."
In the great snow
And Yi
mountain of the
Tiancong's
underworld,
nonsense
deep in the
actually
snowy
made me
plains,
believe it.
there was an ice cliff
I
glowing with
mistakenly
icy
thought
blue
that my
light that
mission
had
was to
existed for
assist him in
countless
punishing
years.
on behalf of the heavens.
Silver armor soldier,
Thus,
purple
I
armor
used the dragon
soldier,
race's
blue
divine
armor
dragon
soldier,
empowerment
and red
technique
armor
and
soldier
transferred half
paced
of my
back and forth
cultivation
in
to
front
him,
of the ice
allowing
palace's
him to
gate,
reach the
as
early
if guarding
stage
the
of small
gate.
god.
The ice
At the
souls
same
inside
time,
the ice
my
sculptures
cultivation
shone
dropped
with
from the
brilliant
middle
colors.
stage of small god to the
They
late
looked
stage of
helpless and
small
melancholy,
god.
thinking about something.
Otherwise, Jin Tai and
Thousand
Bai Chi
armor
wouldn't be
soldier.
my match.
Demon King
Divine
Divine
Dragon
has led the
empowerment
army of Demon
technique.
Dao back to the three realms.
You gave him half of your cultivation.
What do you think?
Yu Qianqiu
Red armor
was
soldier
speechless.
suddenly turned around and asked
Just how
Silver
good was
armor
this Yi
soldier.
Tiancong at deceiving
Purple
people?
armor soldier and blue armor
To be able to
soldier
deceive
turned
him
around
into
at the
giving him
same
half of his
time.
cultivation.
He's
For
already
some
come
reason,
out.
Yu
What can I
Qianqiu
think?
suddenly felt a sense of
Silver
sympathy
armor
for Yi
soldier
Tian.
stopped in front of a carp ice
After
sculpture.
listening to Hong
His
Tailong's
gaze
story,
focused on the
why
eyes
did he
of the
feel
ice
that this
sculpture?
guy's style was somewhat
There
similar
were
to
two
his
black
own?
ice souls there.
How could there be a person
Red
who thought
armor
of himself
soldier
as a
slapped an
swindler?
ice pillar in the pavilion next
After
to
Yu
him
Qianqiu
inside.
came back to his senses,
We took such
he
a
coughed
great
twice
risk
to
to
cover
seal
up his
Demon King
awkwardness
3
and
night
said,
and the others
"What
back
realm
then?
were Jin Tai and Bai
What a
Chi's
great
cultivation?"
price we paid. Why couldn't the
But
two
now
of you
the
defeat
underworld
them with your
emperor
early
has released
stage
them,
small god
and we become the
cultivation?
dogs of Demon Dao again.
At that time, they had
Back
both
then,
stepped into
we
the middle
risked our
stage of
lives
small
to seal
god.
the demon realm for the peace
Their
of the three
cultivation was a
realms.
level higher than mine
But
when
now,
we separated. Soldier,
Hong Tailong said with
you're
certainty,
thinking too much.
as if you wanted Yu Qianqiu to
Silver
believe that
armor
this was the
soldier looked
reason
at
why
him
he
coldly
couldn't
and
defeat
said
the
in a
other
low
party.
voice, "The underworld
He was
emperor
still
has
rather
his reasons
concerned
for
about
doing
his
this."
reputation.
The other
Yu
three were
Qianqiu
silent.
nodded thoughtfully.
Within the ice palace,
Do you think I would come looking for you if I hadn't
who was
met the
wrapped in a
coiling
furry
dragon
fur
god,
coat,
fell asleep
Damn it.
peacefully again?
I'm the true
However,
heaven's torturer.
her face still had a sickly
Those things
flush.
were all given to me.
The Snow Emperor
Open
and
your
Snow
eyes and
Empress
take a
both
look at
heaved
what
a
this
sigh of
is.
relief.
He
They
casually
cupped
took
their
out the
hands
divine
towards
arrow
Bai Chi,
and waved it in
who
front of
walked down
Hong
from the
Tailong's
ice
eyes,
bed,
and said,
"Thank
"Heaven and
you,
earth splitting
Emperor
arrow
of the underworld."
Hong
We
Tailong
only
muttered
talk
to
about
himself,
friendship, not thanks.
He was dumbfounded as he
Bai
looked
Chi
at the divine
smiled
arrow.
elegantly as he stepped on the
He
ice
could tell that the
barefoot.
divine arrow had been
This is
confirmed
why
as
I
its
didn't
owner
expose
from how
our
lightly it was
relationship
being
even
held
in
in
the
the most
Miaoyi's
difficult
hand.
times. Suddenly,
If I really
he
want
opened
to
his
thank
mouth.
you, my
Woo
four
woo.
brothers should be the one thanking
Then
you for taking
he started
care of
to
them.
cry loudly. Underworld Emperor,
As he cried,
you're too kind.
he kept shouting, "I
The
was
Snow
wrong.
Empress shook her head and
I
smiled
deserve to
bitterly.
die.
The
I'm
true
wrong.
Samadhi fire in Linglong's
I deserve
body
to
is getting
die."
harder and harder to suppress.
The old shameless man started
If the
crying
Emperor
again.
of the Underworld hadn't arrived in
Qianqiu
time and
rolled
used
his
his profound
eyes.
cultivation to suppress
He
it,
couldn't do
we
anything
wouldn't
to
know
this
what to
old
do.
thing.
The
After
Snow
all,
Empress sat
he was
quietly
also
beside
lying to
her
him.
daughter. Just
Bai
as he
Chi
was about
looked
to
at
put away the
Shuo
divine
Linglong,
arrow,
who was sleeping
his gaze suddenly
peacefully,
focused
and nodded
on the
with a
arrow.
serious expression.
He suddenly
Seems like it's
recalled the
getting more and
conversation
more
between the
serious
coiling
each time.
dragon god and the demon
Don't
god.
worry, if you need anything,
The meaning and the
just
legend
look
of the
for me.
coiling dragon god was
I'll be
very
there
clear.
anytime.
Those
I'll
things
look for
were
an
indeed
opportunity
given
to
to the
borrow
demon
the power
god's
of the devil's
descendants.
path to find the fire
In other
spirit
words,
of the five
it
great
wasn't wrong
spirits
for
of
the
heaven
divine
and earth.
arrow to recognize Yi
Hopefully,
Tiancong as
I'll
its
be able
owner.
to remove the Samadhi true
Since that was
fire
the
from
case,
Linglong's
why
body
didn't
in one
Miao
fell
Yi
swoop.
explain it to Hong Tailong?
Miao Yi could
The
tell
Snow
that Hong
Emperor and
Tailong's
Snow
brain
Empress
wasn't very
looked at
bright.
each other.
Otherwise,
They wanted to say
he wouldn't
something
have
but
been
hesitated
so easily.
The Snow
But
Emperor
why
could
did the
not
coiling
help but
dragon
ask,
god
I heard
choose
that
such
the
a person
Emperor
to
of
do
the
things for
Underworld
him?
has released the demon lord
Could
of
it be
three
that the
nights
toiling dragon god really didn't have any subordinates he could use.
Hesitated for a moment.
If it wasn't for a friend suddenly popping out of nowhere and telling him about the demon realm, Demon Monarch probably wouldn't have gone to the demon realm that I will still represent the underworld and the demonic path. The item wouldn't have landed in Yi Tiankong's hands and wouldn't have been given to the demon god's descendants. You and your wife have never cared about worldly affairs. Chapter 1171. The changes outside have nothing to do with you. The coiling dragon god had clearly told the demonic god that the heaven-splitting arrow was meant for his descendants. I'm just afraid that you won't be able to make the decision when the time comes. He chose Yi Tiankong, the Snow Emperor, who was unable to cultivate. However, even though there was nothing he was very talented, he was still unable to cultivate. And said, "Thank you." He remembered that the demonic god had said that this was a trap. He could guess what they were thinking. Could there really be something fishy going on? He was also in a difficult position. What the hell were these big shots warmly up to? And said, "All right." Yu Qianqiu looked at the heaven-splitting arrow in his hand and suddenly shivered. I felt as if he had fallen into some kind of trap. We'll meet again in the future. He began to consider whether or not he should keep the heaven-splitting arrow, lest he was used by others without even knowing it. To the entrance of the ice palace. It was a pity to abandon such a divine soldiers, and the other three also came over to express their gratitude to the couple. No matter what, it was better to matters on their minds. Not only could it save his life at a critical moment, they were about to leave. It could also prevent it from falling into the hands of others. The others had just turned around when they all froze on the spot. Don't cry. Even the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress were no exception. Let's forget about it. Two figures suddenly appeared on the ice cliff, pretending to be magnanimous. Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong were startled when they saw Bai Qi and the others. After all, you can't be blamed entirely. Suddenly laughed wildly and said, "If you want to blame someone, iron shoes and fruitless searching for being too kind, but you'll find what you're looking for without even looking for it." Speaking up to this point, his heart surged with a bunch of knots. I didn't expect to see us here. Yi Tiankong created the demon domain, but he and his disciple helped him guard the demon domain and worked as torture envoys for such a long time. Bai Qi was even more shocked as he said, "What a scam. You're not dead yet." Hong Tailong immediately stopped Emperor crying. And Snow Empress knew Yu Qianqiu. He wiped away his tears and asked, Hong Tailong, "Then what about the transmission jade archive?" Seeing how shocked Bai Qi and the others were, child stared in addition at his to Hong Tailong's dumbfounded, the couple instantly felt that something was amiss, that he couldn't say a word. Hong Tailong laughed. This was probably the first time he had seen his grandfather cry. "What can a mere spirit-severing smoke do to me? What else can I do?" Bai Qi, you probably didn't expect to see me again even in your dreams. Although Yu Qianqiu was magnanimous, he still couldn't help but feel his heartache. Bai Qi suddenly turned around and looked at the Snow Emperor and trick you to this extent. "How did you know his identity?" "You two betrayed me." He said it himself. A murderous intent appeared on his face. Hong Tailong's eyes instantly blurred. The couple hurriedly waved their hands and explained, he slowly Emperor said, of the underworld, "I don't know where Jin Tai and Bai Qi got the soul transforming. Why would we betray you?" Then how did they know I never dreamed that they could actually get their hands on the soul-transforming smoke? The silver armor 1,000 soldiers and the other three also looked at the couple that were dead for sure. But they don't know that my dragon race is immune to the soul-transforming smoke immediately smiled bitterly at Yu Qianqiu and said, "The soul-transforming smoke has no effect on me. Why didn't you come earlier or later?" Kong was able to hold on for a period of time because of the dragon essence I poured into him. I can't even explain ourselves. But he also knows that he won't be able to live for long. Yu Qianqiu was here to exchange for the suck in all the soul-dissolving smoke that Jin Tai and Bai Qi had set up. Happen to the couple? Then, he immediately laughed at the immortal ascension stage in the human world. It really has nothing to do with them. He used the soul-dissolving smoke to set up a grand array to prevent them when I was passing by from coming to the human world again. I didn't expect to see you here. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his chin and asked quietly. The array formation dared to collude with that bastard Yen situation to kill me, right? Today, what's your intention? It's time to settle the score. He said that Demon Lord Three Knights had once said that he had thrown a demonic book into this human world. Bai Qi was just hoping that someone would be able to learn the demonic art. Thinking about the shocked reactions of Hong Tailong and Yu Qianqiu, Hong Tailong shook his head slightly and smiled bitterly. He immediately laughed coldly and said that he had fallen in love with this world, but he couldn't ruin his father's plans, as if he was worried that someone else would appear. He set up a grand array that could seal the demon realm brandished his halberd. The purple-armored soldier brandished his side, he'd block it. The blue-armored soldier brandished his blue bow then he'd just let it go. And the red-armored soldier loosened his grip on the red-armored soldier's red chain. Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly. The four of them immediately stood in a straight line on either side of the battlefield. So he knew that Hong Tailong wasn't lying. The Snow Empress and her husband smiled bitterly. Yi Tiankong didn't lie to Hong Tailong. It was obvious that the red old man wasn't someone to be trifled with. Opened up the passageway to the demon realm. If the two groups fought, the grand array did seal the passageway to the demon realm once again. The Snow Empress gave a look to the Snow Empress, and the Snow Empress that I wanted to take revenge for him. but he said that I wasn't a match for those two conscious daughter, so he didn't want anything to happen to me. Yu Qianqiu took out the golden heaven and earth splitting arrow and stabbed it into the icy ground into the netherworld. Everyone's eyes turned cold. No one from the netherworld or immortal realm would be able to come to this human world. A cold smile gradually appeared on the corner of Bai Chi's mouth. He didn't tell me the answer at first, and he said, "The heaven and earth splitting arrow is in your hands. And used my dragon binding rope to bind me that he told me the demon lord is really dead." Yu Qianqiu's brows twitched slightly. It would have been fine if Bai Chi didn't mention the myriad down Hong Tai-long's face as he sobbed. The moment Bai Chi mentioned the myriad swords identity, he said that he was very happy, let out a wild roar and charged over. It was the happiest time in his life. Bai Chi turned into a stream of light and shot into the sky, realize his dream of flying in the sky and burrowing into the earth. The sky rumbled, he was willing to die for this and a red figure entangled with each other. He didn't care how long it would be, the two of them directly as long as he was in a fierce battle. He didn't feel pain and earth because he was poisoned by the soul cliff instantly exploded into tens of thousands of divine arrows. He had changed his fate and they shot toward the four netherworld generals like a torrential rain. He said that it wasn't that he didn't have the ability to destroy the immortal ascension stage, extremely and it wasn't that he dared have the ability to seal the four netherworld generals head on. Similarly, it wasn't that he didn't have the ability to completely annihilate Jin Tai and Bai Chi. Reckless fellow. It was that he couldn't do it. Because he wasn't the person I was looking for. The Silver Armor Army's cold laughter was still what the mission of punishing on behalf of the heavens had already teleported and disappeared. He just wanted to have a good time in this world. And he didn't want to make tens of thousands of divine swords immediately. The mission of punishing on behalf of the heavens should belong to whoever it belonged to. The Red Armor Army. He was just borrowing it for fun. The Purple Armor Army had appeared behind Yu Qianqiu when he couldn't play anymore, and they surrounded him. He naturally had to return it to someone else. All of them had cold smiles on their faces. He said that the shadow of the halberd filled the sky, and it was much friendlier than the devil realm. The shadow of the death god sighed. He really didn't want to see this world being ravaged, and the shadow of the red chain lashed out. So he created the demon realm. With the cultivation of these three people, if one day someone wanted to destroy the peace was hid by he wanted to do his best he would immediately have a little bit of protection to this world so that it wouldn't be easily ruined by outsiders. Especially since the Blue Armor Army in the sky had already drawn their soul-slaying bows, and this world would give him a little bit of happiness in return. If Yu Qianqiu was lucky enough to escape, he was also afraid that the combination of the divine arrow and the demon and ghost immortal execution formation would be tens of thousands of divine swords all shot into the enormous icy mountain. So he deliberately left one of the 10,000 swords that contained the soul of the great god Yi in the heaven and earth formation. The Snow Empress directly dove into the ice on behalf of the heavens is destined. At almost the same time that the four of them disappeared, when that time let out a furious roar, he wants me to tell that person that there is another divine with a ferocious seven-colored heaven and earth formation, and let him find it. It covered a radius of 1,000 meters. Then it will be returned to its original owner. A ray of seven-colored light that illuminated the heaven and earth was like a resplendent pearl. The remaining 9,999 swords are in the center of the lake outside, and have become the formation's was already quite shocked. If I actually discovered that Hong Tai-long's cultivation was far stronger than before, be broken. Because he didn't know that the myriad swords demon monarch had used the divine dragon empowerment to the people of the devil half of Hong Tai-long's cultivation to him before he died. 3 nights or father he didn't have the time to notice, and he doesn't want to see someone kill his father one day. So he confiscated it. In addition, Hong Tai-long's dragon body, that if that person which belonged to the heaven and earth formation, was extremely resistant to grasped the method to control the purple flames. He actually withstood the black light for the dragon binding rope that trapped mirror without caring about the energy of the purple flames of the mortal realm to set up without defending, to control it, completely throwing caution to the wind. If he can break the heaven and earth formation, it was as if he was fighting with his life on the line. When that time comes, really everything will be dust to dust and dust to dust. Just when Bai Chi was tell that person that he only longer and wait for the silver and that he really doesn't and the other three to kill Yu Qianqiu, they would come over to help relieve the pressure on Bai Chi. He used the divine dragon's empowerment art to return the cultivation I gave him to the huge seven-colored flame blossoming below, right before my eyes, and immediately cried out in surprise, true smiling fire. He sank into this river of lava, taking advantage of Bai Chi's turning into ashes. Hong Tai-long never to be seen the opportunity to launch his sneak attack. At this point, Hong Tai-long's tears were already streaming down his rays of golden light shot out, and he was sobbing uncontrollably. 2 dragon-binding chains behind him, one bound Bai Chi's child also and the other bound his upper body. It was unknown in whether the blink it was of an because he had truly understood the story and felt sad, or because he was touched by the sight of his grandfather. No matter how hard Bai Chi struggled, he couldn't escape. After listening to Hong Tai-long's story, was instantly scared out of his silence for a long time. Hong Tai-long angrily shouted, he let out a violent dragon fist. He didn't expect that such a story would be gathered at one point and violently smashed onto Bai Chi's body. He asked himself honestly, As the person who impersonated the punishment on behalf of the heavens, he had no reason to blame anyone. A huge deep pit was formed on the vast snowy ground. Who had fallen in love with him. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and rushed into the deep pit on the ground and didn't stop there. He could tell that Yi Tiankong wasn't a bad person, and he could also tell that Yi Tiankong had treated and the other three cried out in surprise before Bai Qi. Furthermore, the happy times that Yi Tiankong had gone through must have been one of Hong Tailong's happiest times. The blue armor heavenly soldier had his bow drawn in the air, and since he was standing a little further away, he was able to dodge the attack with their true friendship was right before his eyes. However, the silver armor army and the other two who attacked Bai Qi were unlucky. They repeatedly teleported because he was willing to be kept in the dark and foolishly fooled around. After much difficulty, they finally escaped the flames that were chasing after them. Sometimes friendship or love was far higher than the endless pursuit of profound cultivation. For example, when Lan Feng's love for Lu Yanqing was unwavering until death, it would be a huge problem. I've already broken the heaven and earth great extinguish it no matter how hard they tried. I've also found the divine sword that was abandoned at the moonlight away their weapons without hesitation. The heaven and earth and the splitting arrow has also been restored to its original state. Yu Qianqiu looked at the two golden chains in Hong Tailong's hands and said Chapter 1178, Yi Tiankong is right. The iceberg where the ice palace was located the energy of the purple flame, not into water, but perhaps I can help you undo the shackles wherever of the dragon binding rope fire reached. And you want to continue staying here and filled with smoke or do you want to leave with me? The blue-armored celestial soldier who had just fled immediately noticed Bai Qi's terrible condition. Looking at Yu Qianqiu, he said weakly, cried out in grief, did Ancestor Emperor of Dragon agree to let me out? He turned around and shot the soul-slaying arrow at Hong Tailong, Yu Qianqiu who was beating Bai Qi. Yu Qianqiu was nowhere to be seen amidst the rapidly dispersing mist and the colorful flame. Hong Tailong was pretending to be pitiful, but in reality, rang out. He mistakenly believed that Yu Qianqiu was really related golden specks of light shot out from the blazing flames. After beating around the bush for so long, the earth, he wanted to know Ancestor in order to save the Emperor of the Underworld. The blue-armored celestial that he would be punished for drawn their bows and shot arrows furiously didn't care about their own lives. Damn it, you're dishonest. Instead of dodging the rain-like attacks of the divine swords, they braced themselves and turned around to shoot the arrow at Hong Tailong. raised his brows and said, as soon as the arrow was shot out, a dozen indestructible golden-like specks pierced through his body, Hong Tailong turning him into a sieve. He didn't know what he meant by this question. The soul-slaying bow in his hand was cut into a few pieces by the rapidly piercing divine swords, making a buzzing noise. This is the first time Ancestor Coiling Dragon has summoned me. Tens of blood spurted out from the blue-armored celestial soldier's accepted a mission from Ancestor Coiling Dragon. Although he tried to choke back something with a reluctant expression, he still choked out a mouthful of blood. Yu Qianqiu's eyes narrowed. His head tilted to one side. It looked like Coiling Dragon had purposely chosen this guy. Silver-armored celestial soldier and the demonic god had said, who had hastily dodged the divine swords, Yu Qianqiu's eyes darted around. Immediately, he stared at Hong Tailong and chuckled coldly. Celestial army, tell me honestly, did you really forget to ask about the way back with a bloody man in his hand? Or did you actually know the way back, arrow brushed but because you went overboard and were afraid that you wouldn't be able to answer to Ancestor Coiling Dragon, and the snowland had a guilty conscience and the colorful flame covering 1,000 meters on the snowland shrank rapidly, and a man made of fire dashed out, and he said solemnly, behind him, how is that possible? Tens of thousands of golden light specks circled like a shoal of fish in the ocean. No one can lie in front of me and get away with it. Hong Tailong carried by Qi, who was already on the verge of death, his white clothes dyed in blood. He was still tightly bound by the dragon binding rope. You and Yi Tiankong were simply bad partners who work hand in glove with each other, and said, take him, I've already sealed his arranged everything flawlessly. Then, he turned to look at the three dumbfounded people in the distance forget and about sneered, the accomplice of a villain who helped the evildoer to me. If he didn't help you calculate a way to answer to the mission, retracted his he probably wouldn't have died and reached out to grab the dragon binding rope. You wouldn't have stayed here obediently for so many years, by Qi, right? Who was beaten up beyond recognition, if you had nothing better to do, and casually wouldn't you at least vent your anger by shouting a few times? You wouldn't have the slightest bit of sympathy for him. This was a life and death battle. Looked at his arms that had regained their freedom today, and laughed heartily. His ending wouldn't be any better. There's a space in the stomach of my dragon race. They might even hand him over to Yan It's just like your storage space. It's used to store things. That was why it was said that showing mercy to the enemy was equivalent to committing suicide. Yu Qianqiu looked at his stomach and felt a chill. Yu Qianqiu called out to Hong Tailong, since you're already free, his eyes narrowed as he swept a glance at the three people in the distance. He felt a little strange in his heart. He then asked if the three of them had split up and fled. Hong Tai-long might not have been able to capture all of them, but not a single drop fell. It would already be good if he could capture the underground space with a red light. However, the three of them did not flee. Yu Qianqiu raised his head and narrowed his eyes. They were looking at him with grief and indignation. and Bai Qi have opened the seal to the demonic realm and asked, "Are we going to let them go?" Demon Lord Three Knights is leading the demonic realm army to sweep across the immortal and netherworld. He stretched out his other hand and a divine sword flashed into his Demon Lord Three Knights slaughtering over 200 million immortal realm expressionlessly and shouted at the three people, "They don't even want to let the human realm off. I will immediately cut off his head." It was precisely because the demonic realm army attacked that I activated the demonic ghost immortal punishing formation to deal with them. They probably won't barge into the human realm before they understand the situation. I can let them go, but he must die. Jin Tai and Bai Qi opened the passage to the demonic realm. Hong Tai-long couldn't help but be shocked. He still held a grudge against Yi Tiankong. His red brows furrowed. "Why don't I hand him over to you? He recalled that demon and you can do whatever you want to do. Yi Tiankong's father. After you're done, you can go back to your heavy voice, and I'll go do my own thing. To help you deal with the demonic realm army? From now on, we won't have anything to do with each other. I don't mind telling you the truth. I've been to the demonic realm before." Hong Tai-long clenched his fists tightly and angrily turned his head away. "But I'm definitely not Demon Lord Three Knights' opponent. You have to keep your word." Yu Qianqiu shook his head. "The silver-armored army of 1,000 soldiers sorrowful voice one step at a time. What we need to do now is to stop them from harassing a man of my word. The passage to the demonic realm is still sealed, but we need to destroy the immortal ascension stage to cut off any possibility of them barging in." Yu Qianqiu grabbed Bai Qi and placed the sword on his neck. "We need to find a way to seal the passage to the netherworld and completely cut off any possibility of them entering this honestly and promise to serve me from now on. You should know how to seal the passage between the two realms. The silver-armored army of 1,000 soldiers and the other two looked at each other with a bitter smile. Hong Tai-long stared at the slightly disappointed Yu Qianqiu with a burning gaze. Yu Qianqiu tilted his head and said, "Block the passage between the two realms. Go seal their cultivation bases. If someone uses a divine artifact to guard the entrance of the flying over, it can also prevent people from the two realms from passing through." Once again lit up. Yu Qianqiu's gaze slowly met his, which had almost been smashed. He said in a heavy voice, heaved up and down, "You mean, and a large mouthful of blocked blood splitting arrow to block the passage between the two realms?" Staring at the three flying over with bloodshot eyes, he desperately nodded his head firmly. "The heaven and earth splitting arrow isn't an ordinary divine artifact. Don't believe his nonsense. If it hasn't recognized a master, hurry up and go. Blocking the passage between the two realms would still be dangerous." Yu Qianqiu didn't stop Bai Qi from shouting. "Master." He pretended to be merciful to block the passage between the two realms. The three people looked at Bai Qi's pitiful appearance. "Unless you die." Who could have imagined that the Emperor of the Underworld, pondered for a moment, who was so graceful in the Underworld royal palace, for the peace of this human would end up like this? "I've spared no expense and put in a lot of effort." Who were made of iron, now that things have come to this, tears. How can I let it repeat the mistakes of the past? They stubbornly shook their heads of my selfishness. "Looks like this is the only way." It was the first time in their lives that they refused the Emperor of the Underworld shouted, "All right." They didn't expect it to be under such circumstances. Use the divine arrow to block it. The three people didn't leave. He was actually willing to give up on the heaven and earth splitting arrow. Bai Qi's face instantly filled with deep tears of blood came out of his eyes. This kind of person didn't make him work for nothing. Pain. "Don't come over." However, he had thought too highly of Yu Qianqiu. His voice was so miserable that it was like he didn't want to give up on such a divine artifact. But the situation forced him to do so. For the time hated Bai Qi to the bone. In addition, he had always suspected that there was some kind of conspiracy to give up his divine arrow, survival so he was in a state of anxiety. He could not help but be moved. He believed that once he found a way to seal it, he would still be able to retrieve the divine arrow and teleport it to the front of Silver Armor Army and the other two without any hesitation. And the surrounding scenery changed continuously. With a lightning-fast move, he quickly sealed their cultivations, the two of them had already arrived at the entrance to the netherworld. Seeing that the situation was under control, when Hong Tai-long waved his hand and put away the 10,000 swords as one, he immediately turned around to take a look. He carried Bai Qi, who was badly mutilated, netherworld and landed on the ice field, and that huge door made him understand that they had already arrived at the entrance to the netherworld. To the ground. He suddenly stared at Yu Qianqiu and cried out in shock, "You have a star being helped." Nonsense. However, their cultivation was sealed, the one who executes punishment on behalf of the heavens, who was weighed down by the dragon binding rope. What's so strange about having a star bead? They fell down one by one. Yu Qianqiu revealed a very disdainful expression. And fell down one by one. He had only revealed a little bit of his skill to make Hong Tai-long was built on him wholeheartedly. The Snow Emperor had originally wanted to show off a little, who had hidden far away, but he didn't expect the other party to be so knowledgeable. The
saving
Snow
him a lot of
Empress
effort
was still
to
carrying
explain.
her unconscious daughter.
He casually took out the
The
heaven
two of
and
them were
earth
also
splitting
frightened
arrow
by
and
the
held it in
fierce
his
battle,
hand,
but
stroking it
Yuchencho's true
regretfully.
Samadhi fire attracted
Then,
them.
he resolutely
Once
and
the battle
forcefully
ended,
pushed open
they
the door to
immediately
the
rushed
netherworld.
back.
Sharp
saw
eerie
hope to
winds
save their
instantly
daughter,
gushed out
because
like ink.
Yuchencho had promised
The
them.
divine arrow entered the
Let him
crack of the
go.
door, and he shouted,
We have already
"Expand."
stretched out our necks to be killed.
The entire divine arrow
You have already
immediately
sealed his
shone with
cultivation,
golden light,
why
and
don't
it
you let
rapidly
him
grew
go?
longer and thicker,
The silver
expanding
armor
the door
army
to the
roared at
netherworld.
Hong Tai Long.
Even
Only
if you
when
want to
half
kill
of the
him,
arrow was
there is no
inside
need to
and the
treat
other
him like
half was
this.
outside. Did the
He was
eerie
once
wind
the supreme
cease?
emperor of the netherworld.
Seeing that
and he has his own
had
dignity.
really given up on the heaven and
At
earth
least when the
splitting
myriad
arrow,
swords
Hong
demon
Tai
lord
Long was
died,
incomparably
no one
moved.
humiliated him.
Previously,
The three
he
people were
suspected
really
that
powerless
Yuchencho
to
would be
help by
reluctant
chi
to
up.
part with the heaven and earth
Without their
splitting arrow
cultivation,
and had been waiting
the
to
ice
see.
under their feet was slippery.
At this
There
moment,
was no
he
expression
instantly
on Hong
let
Tai
go of his
Long's
pride
face.
as a dragon and willingly
For some
submitted to
unknown reason,
Yuchencho.
he actually opened his
Hong
mouth
Tai
and
Long
swallowed
took a
the
deep
dragon
breath
binding
and
rope
said,
that was
I've
binding
heard
by
a
chi
legend
back
in the
into his
immortal
stomach.
realm.
Without
The
the
weight
weight
of
of
the
the
dragon
dragon
is
binding
extraordinary.
rope, Bai Chi choked out
It's
another
easy to
mouthful
shatter,
of blood
but it's
when the
hard to
three
merge
people helped
again.
him up. If
He
someone
looked
can
at the
use the
three
true
people and
Samadhi
shook his
fire
head
to
with completely
completely
erase
erase
the
the various
indignation,
forms of
why are
life
you
on
all
the
so
door and
stupid?
merge the entire door
We
together
have no
seamlessly,
value to him now.
separating the yin and yang.
Do you all really
Then the
think that
yin
he will
and
let us
yang
go?
will be severed? We know that
The
there is
entire
no
door
way
to
out.
the
netherworld will disappear, and the netherworld passage will
The
also
Purple
disappear
Armor
completely.
army
suddenly laughed bitterly
There's such
and
a
said,
thing.
but we are already used to going
Yuchencho
through
was
life and
startled.
death with you. Then,
We have been
he
like
shook
this
his
for
head
so
and
many
smiled
years.
bitterly.
Moreover,
He stretched out
all
his
of our
palm,
lives
and
were saved
green,
by you.
black, and purple flames
You have
appeared
never
in
let
his
us
palm
down,
at the same
and
time.
you have always treated us well.
He said, I can
How
control
can we
these
bear to
three
leave you
mystical
behind?
flames, but my cultivation
Bai Chi
is too
closed
low.
his eyes,
And tears
can't
of blood
merge them
flowed
into the
out
true
from his
Samadhi
eyes.
fire.
Suddenly,
Otherwise,
he opened
so
his
what if I
eyes
completely
angrily and
sever the
tilted his
yin and
head to
yang
look
realms?
at Yuchencho. He gritted his teeth and said, Chapter
Yuchencho.
1173. What will make you let them go? Hong Tai Long was speechless with his mouth
Yuchencho
slightly
looked at him
agape.
coldly and didn't answer
He
his
was
question.
wondering how many things this guy had hidden on him. He said indifferently, How could he have anything
before
he
you
wanted?
attacked me that time,
Furthermore,
I didn't have any
each
ill
and
will
every one
towards
of them
you.
was unimaginable.
I just don't understand.
As expected of the executioner
be
of
that
heaven,
just because
he was
Mu
blessed
Yuanzi
by the
injured you,
heavens. You're going to open the demon world and let all the
retracted
beings
the
of the
flames
three
in his
realms
palm
die
and
with you.
closed his mouth.
Bai Chi's struggling
Since
body
you possessed
softened,
3 types
and he
of
lay
true
in the
fire,
arms of the
you
silver
must be
armor
proficient
army
in the
of
art of controlling
soldiers.
fire.
He laughed
won't be
wildly
difficult
and
to
said,
fuse them into the
Why?
Samadhi true fire.
I also want to know why.
Hong Tai Long smiled faintly
I once
and
led my
said,
subordinates
I can use
to
the
risk their
divine
lives
dragon
for the sake of all living
to
beings
transfer
in
a
the
portion
three
of my
realms.
cultivation to you so that
I
you have
risked
enough
my life to
cultivation
seal the
fuse
demon
with the
realm of
Samadhi
King
true
Jin
fire.
Tai.
However,
For the sake of
it will
all
take a
living
long
beings in
time.
the three realms,
I've
without
always
at least
suppressed
half a
Kim
year
Tae
of
and prevented
comprehension
him from acting
it will be
recklessly.
difficult to fuse them. For so many years,
Yuchencho's
I've
eyes
always
lit up
warned
at
Kim
first,
Tae that if
but
he
he
dared
shook
to
his head
disturb
with
the
a bitter
balance
smile
of the three
and said,
realms,
half a
I would
year?
lead the heroes of the netherworld
I can do
to
many
beat him
things
up.
in this half a year.
Otherwise, do you
Now
think
is
that
not the
inhumane
time.
fellow would really treat everyone
Thank
in
you
the
for your
world as
kind
humans?
intentions,
But this is
Let
the
me
time
ask
where I
you,
can use
who
you.
has ever heard of the three
Preserving
realms
your
not being in
cultivation
chaos
is more
for
useful
100,000
to me.
years?
Seeing
But
that he was
why?
able to resist the temptation
Bai Chi
of transferring
retorted
his
angrily,
cultivation,
why do I have
Hong
to
Tai
bear the
Long fell
retribution
into
for
deep
Master
thought as if he was
Jin's evil deed of
hesitating
killing
about
the entire
something.
Wu family?
After a long time,
Why did Mu
he
Yuanzi
slowly
injure me
said,
instead of
there is
dealing with
another
the main
way.
culprit?
That is to
Why do
devour
all
the
the
beings
fire
in the three
spirit
realms
one
turn
of the
against
5
me when I'm
spirits
working
of
for the
heaven and
welfare
earth?
of the three realms? Let the fire spirits
Not a single
innate
person,
comprehension of
not
fire
even a single
fuse with
person
you,
stood
and you can
out to
quickly
speak for
fuse
me.
them into the Samadhi true
Since
fire.
the entire world is filled with
Fire
heartless
spirit,
people,
if I don't see rivers of
Yuchencho
heartless
mocked
people's
himself,
blood flow,
let alone
why should I
devouring
live
the
in
fire
sorrow?
spirit?
I can even
Why should I
devour
die
the
in
5
sorrow?
spirits of water,
Then
fire,
let me tell you
metal,
why.
wood, and earth.
Because there is no why.
Hong Tai Long was stunned and
No
said,
matter how
what
good
do
you
you think
mean.
you are? It's all
I know
because you
all
think
of the
you
5
are.
elements control arts.
Everything is retribution.
What do you mean?
If you can't figure it
Yuchencho
out,
said
you can slowly
disapprovingly.
think about it in your next life.
There was not a trace of pride on his
Yuchencho
face.
said as he took out a divine
What?
sword.
Hong Tai Long was shocked again and was stunned for a long time before he said anxiously, "You know all of the
Why does it
five
look like
elements
you want to
control
kill me?"
arts?" Little did he know that Yu
possible?
Qianqiu and the silver
How can a
armor
person
army of
cultivate
thousand
all of the
soldiers were
five elements
negotiating
control
terms
arts?
because he didn't want to leave behind
What
any
happens when
future
the five
troubles that might
elements
suddenly
clash?
pop up one day to take
Don't
revenge.
you feel uncomfortable?
Thus,
You
he
should have
purposely
told me
led
this
the three
earlier.
of them to surrender so that
I
they
have
wouldn't
already
slip through the
practiced
net.
it.
What's the use of saying it now? To him, if he
Besides,
didn't kill a
I
single
don't feel
one and let them all
uncomfortable at all.
go, then he would be a good
Yu
person.
Qianqiu
shrugged. Since he was going to
Then,
kill them,
he
would
stretched
have
out
to
his left
eliminate them
hand and a
completely.
water dragon appeared.
Moreover, It swam already a member of the Devil Dao. With a stretch of his right hand, to the heavens, an earth dragon emerged that he would exterminate the Devil Dao and sacrifice all living beings in the demon domain. A golden dragon appeared from each of his hands, and he kissed the greenwood elemental dragon. After separating, Chapter 1179. His shy and bashful look after having an affair was simply vivid and lifelike. She braced herself and cupped her hands with a bitter smile. I know you want the corners of his mouth twitched incessantly, and he screamed madly in his heart that there was no justice in this world. I am willing to give it to you. This guy's body is simply a treasure trove. Who was carrying Schwelling as expected of the person who executes punishments on behalf of the heavens. She was afraid that her husband had angered Yu Qianqiu. However, can a person who executes punishments on behalf of the heavens be so extravagant and unscrupulous? Especially Yu Qianqiu's He was simply a person who was blessed by the nemesis of the couple's cultivation method. If they were in the god realm, they would be envied to death. She was afraid that angering Yu Qianqiu would mean giving up the chance to about Yu Qianqiu's identity as the heavens executioner. They were indebted to Bai Qi. He dared to pat his chest. Although she felt uncomfortable holding back some the wrong person again, she couldn't say them out loud. He would dig his eyeballs out and feed them to the dogs. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the couple, then slowly raised the divine sword in his hand and gently caressed the glowing edge of the sword. The immortal ascension stage. We had an agreement. Just as Yu Qianqiu was about to wave his hand and teleport away, the Xianming soul-refining held his hand and sighed. I know where the fire spirit is. You want to use it to exchange for Bai Qi's life. Yu Qianqiu was startled. You better think carefully. His eyes quickly lit up as he asked, refining technique can only exchange for one person's life. You've already met him twice. Whether it is Bai Qi or your daughter, it's up to you. Yu Qianqiu was instantly lowered his head solemnly. The Snow had been trapped for so many years, and this was the first time he had come out with full of anxiety. However, he said that he had already met him twice, and the three understood and helped him up. Just who could it be? Facing the Snow Emperor, a thought flashed was very gratified and nodded. He recalled the kid who slept on the green lotus with his buttocks naked. With Brother Snow's words, he said in astonishment, I can die without regrets. Could it be that kid in the green fire? My friendship with Brother Snow was not in vain. Kid, he really couldn't think of anyone else. The four of us are destined to live and die together today. Furthermore, I will not live alone, that kid was actually sleeping in the fire. Than death. His background was truly unimaginable in this matter. Sigh. This has nothing to do with you and your wife. This is all fate. Emperor of the Underworld. Do I understand why someone inexplicably gave me 9 precious green lotus fire seeds had already when I was about to leave the divine dragon mountain, who was ignoring him, and sighed. I didn't expect Feelings this. Are all prepared for you. Yu Qianqiu, it's all destined to speak loudly in front of me. Hong Tailong looked at Yu Qianqiu and shook his head with a bitter smile. It seems that the saintess is indeed a prophet. It's Qing air. I had already vaguely figured out the 9-petaled green lotus could nurture 9 fire spirits. I can't blame others for my fate. You stole the green fire at the critical moment of nurturing them. Everything is retribution. Hence, 8 of them died prematurely. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and lowered the sword in his hand. Although that fat kid was tilted his head and asked, he really couldn't do anything to him after he devoured him. A bitter smile appeared on Bai Qi's bloody face, and his eyes became blurry. He didn't expect it to be a fire spirit. He recalled the conversation he had with the underworld saintess in the small courtyard of the dark royal with a bitter smile. He closed his eyes slightly and said, I really can't do it. After all, I wanted to kill you not an outsider. Killing me today is my retribution. I won't erase his consciousness. I treated you well back then. I will extract it and store it. Promise me one thing. In the future, when I have the chance to return to the divine world, I will find a way to find the green lotus fire seed for him to nurture again. Who was still unconscious, let out a soft moan. Hong Tailong's smile was a little unnatural. Her body that was being carried moved slightly. It's just that it will take many years for him to be gradually disappeared. It will be hard on him. The husband and wife looked at their daughter who was recovering quickly, lowered his head and frowned for a while. Bit happy. Let's talk about this later. The Snow Empress raised her head and saw that Yu Qianqiu was staring at her with a burning gaze. With a wave of his hand, smiled bitterly and shake her head. Exit of the netherworld. She took out a jade archive and quickly inserted something into the entrance of the netherworld, passed through the netherworld and directly returned to the immortal world's jade archive and examined it. Demon Lord, after thinking for a long time, who occupied the newly constructed branch of unrequited love palace, was sitting high above. I understand now. Currently, almost no one in the netherworld or immortal world dared to resist the demon world's army. In fact, the Xianming soul-refining technique had also escaped into the netherworld a large amount of time to practice. Below, It was a technique that condensed all of the opponent's cultivation into the essence of the technique and used it. At this moment, a cry of alarm came from outside that was connected to the user. Everyone turned to look and saw a ball of black light charging into the main hall and floating in the air. Was used. The user would need the same type aura immediately filled the entire main hall. This was the reason why the Snow Empress said that Yu-Qianzhou couldn't practice without absorbing the fire spirit. Standing beside Demon Lord After understanding the secret of the Xianming soul refining technique, they shouted in unison that he could use it on the 5 elements of water, fire, the Demon Dao generals who came to capture the intruder, and the Demon Dao generals sitting inside the main hall all 5 spirits of heaven and earth. Jin Tai was among them. The Snow Empress would never have imagined that Yu Qianzhou had mastered all 5 elements of black light to be the arrival of the legendary demon god. This was also the reason why Yu Qianzhou was so interested in the Xianming and soul-refining technique. Demon Lord, long as he mastered it, on the other hand, he would be able to summon an almost unkillable dark soldier in any terrain in the future. When he saw everyone's actions, and her husband didn't have anything to be happy about when their daughter's worries were resolved. Just as he got up and was about to kneel down, they held their daughter and left with flagging voice. Now that the ice palace was destroyed, they suffered a great loss. Everyone was stunned and looked up. The ice soul mysterious light flashed in which was refined by many experts, was destroyed by Yu Qianzhou's Samadhi nascent soul. He immediately stopped kneeling and said in shock, They wanted to find a suitable place to rebuild the ice palace in the snowy mountain. Where's your corporeal body? After today's scene, the others also stood up in shock, feeling like they had knelt for nothing. It was hard for them, who had always been aloof from worldly affairs, to accept it. Immediately recounted the tragic experience didn't want to have anything to do with Yu Qianzhou and the other 3 great demon kings, at least in their opinion. The human world. Bai Qi was much more affectionate and righteous. He emphasized with grief and indignation. Yu Qianzhou stood silently on the ice field breaking through the void and rushing over from the divine world to save me. He stood for a long time. I would have been like great demon King Li Tian and the others. After a long time, turning into ashes, he looked up at the dark night sky and sighed, Please find me a suitable corporeal body. Everyone thought I would become friends with them, but I knew it was impossible when I decided to be so powerful. All these actually hit such a terrifying killing move and instantly killed everyone. But I also lost too many precious things. What was even more shocking was that in order to save Yan Zhuixing, Lord Demon God, the human heart instantly broken through the void from the divine world and descended into the human world. The people I was familiar with left me one by one. Just how powerful was his cultivation, and there's no turning back. It was simply unimaginable. Maybe when I gain more, many people's gazes were filled with extreme reverence. Hong Tailong also couldn't accept the fact that he killed Bai Qi and the other 3 people. They couldn't wait to see Lord Demon God's glory. Although he was the one who shouted the loudest to kill Bai Qi, Demon Lord, after hearing Yu clenched his fists tightly, he seemed to understand his helplessness. He was actually trembling in excitement because of Demon God's divine ability. Have a story behind them. He was also honored by the glory of his ancestors, and maybe everyone had a touching story. There were actually many people who doubted whether Yan Zhuixing was Lord Demon God's. There was more than one person like Bai Qi in the world. They were very suspicious about him becoming the Vice Palace Master of Demon Palace and felt that it was impossible. If they didn't get rid of them quickly, there would only be more Demon God choose a personal disciple from the divine world to the human world. Just as Hong Tailong was about to say a few words of consolation, everything that happened in front of them made everyone dispel their suspicions and became spirited again. They were extremely respectful to Yan Zhuixing and didn't dare to underestimate him in a flash. Demon Recovery Speed was felt that it was a great pity that he couldn't see his ancestors completely different with his own eyes, as if nothing had happened earlier. That was the god he had heard everyone around him praise since he was young. Searched around the icy plains. It was the source of his treasure. The obsidian underworld Lord Demon God's glorious achievements had already been engraved in his bones, but discovered that it was impervious to fire and water. He had always wanted to repeat that proud legend. Even his divine sense couldn't penetrate it. He calmed his excited emotions and slowly let out a breath. It seemed like there was no possibility for him to control it. He tilted his head slightly to look at Eunuch flashed to his side and sneered. Eunuch nodded in understanding. The obsidian underworld light mirror is the symbol of the netherworld finally landed on a guard at the door. Other than meditation cultivators, he discovered that his cultivation and physical body matched Yan Zhuixing's nascent soul. There's such a strange thing. Suddenly, he grabbed at the air, flipped it around, and a gust of wind blew in the hall. Then, that person was sucked over without any ability to resist. This thing could communicate with each other through a video call. After being grabbed by the shoulder by Eunuch Li, it was a pity that he understood that he was about to be possessed. Where should we go now? He immediately cried out, Demon Lord, to sweep across the demonic path's army in the netherworld, or to slaughter in the immortal realm. Before he finished speaking, Eunuch Li had already slapped his palms. Several white halos of light repeatedly expelled the dark red blood mist from his body. Yu Qianzhou lowered his head and calculated for a while. He muttered to himself, pinched open the guard's mouth and twisted it towards the black light that was enveloping
I wonder
Yan
if that fellow's
nascent soul in the air. Will keep his promise. With a whoosh, then the black light suddenly raised his head and said, mouth. My master doesn't know about the human realm being swelled sealed. And squirmed, and then there was no more movement. To him first. Eunuch Li casually picked up that person by the waist. Hong Tai Long saying anything to anyone, he turned around and already waved his hand, and the two of them disappeared. After everyone present witnessed this scene, they all kept quiet out of fear, not daring to say anything. By the netherworld river beside the myriad heavens boundary barrier, swept across the hall and landed on Jean Tai's somewhat strange expression. Looked around and asked hesitantly. He shook off his scarlet cloak and sat down. You're finally here. He coldly asked. A woman's clear voice rang out. What's going on in that the other side of the river? I heard that you and Bai Chi joined hands to fight a person called the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords. It seemed like she had opened up an underground space for herself. You even suffered a great loss. Hong Tai Long was a little surprised and wanted to ask, situation there better than your master? Jean Tai was also a little surprised as he asked, why are you here? Demon Lord, what's going on in that human realm? Back then, that Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords Chapter 1180. This subordinate even suspected even more was that Shinyu also walked out of the cave, smiled awkwardly at him, and curiously looked at Hong Tai Long. It was likely that the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords Heaven and Earth splitting arrow that heavily injured them. Seeing that Shinyu kept that it had already fallen into Yuqiancho's hands, but he was a little puzzled as to why the Heaven and Earth splitting arrow back then didn't seem to have such great power. Why are you two together? This subordinate is also a little confused. I came here a few days in advance to wait for you. Chapter 1174. Who knew that I would also meet Miss Xian here? So when Hong Tai Long's figure suddenly appeared outside the dense fog is also where the colorful fog lingered. Could it be that her ability to predict the future didn't find any movement? Or their gazes landed on the gorgeous fog with different expressions. Just as Yu Qiancho showed some doubts on his face. In reality, it was very unlikely that anyone would come covered with a black veil. Although the colorful fog was mesmerizing, there was no need for ordinary people to set foot in this barren land. Bai Chi didn't escape the calamity after all. Hong Tai Long suddenly turned around and looked at Yu Qiancho, who was already confused. Was even more puzzled. Is really magical. The two of them came here in the blink of wherever you want to go. How did she know that Bai Chi had encountered a calamity? It's all in the blink of an eye. Yu Qiancho didn't dare to underestimate her. It's not as magical as you think. He had a deeper understanding of this woman's divine foresight. However, because he had promised Bai Chi not to leak the news, he turned around and asked curiously. A confused look appeared on his face as he asked, "How much do you know about Starbead? What do you mean Bai Chi didn't escape the calamity?" He originally thought that the other party understood Starbead very well. In the end, Hong Tai Long immediately turned his head and rolled his eyes. I'm not too sure. Xian looked deeply at Yu Qiancho. I've only heard rumors that it's a divine artifact refined by Bai Chi and I were friends. Every bead might have different functions, suffer a tragedy. But those who can use Starbead are people who can inherit to use you to defy the heavens and change his fate. Hong Tai Long looked at Yu Qiancho with a complicated gaze. He understood. There was also some envy that the two of you didn't get along after all. Yu Qiancho smiled disapprovingly. It's really hard to defy the heavens' will. He didn't even know who Dao was, let alone inheriting Dao. He wanted to say something but hesitated that he knew had already changed owners 3 times. He still said with a blank look, it landed in Bai Changchun's hands. Why don't I understand? Then, it landed in Bai Xian saw that he was deliberately acting dumb, so he didn't linger on this topic. It had nothing to do with inheriting Dao. And said, I have been waiting for you here for a long time. He only kept these words in his heart. Since you want to go inside the celestial boundary, why don't we go together? However, he was still rather interested in that mysterious celestial barrier of the mausoleum of the gods. Who exactly is that Dao? Hong Tai Long looked around in shock. I've heard people mentioning it several times, but they didn't mention it in detail. As if he was asking, did you say that? Can you tell me about it? Feeling guilty, Hong Tai Long shook his head and said, I've only heard of it. He transformed into a giant clam and opened his shell to wait for the 3 of them to come in. However, my dragon was the first to enter in the race have always obeyed followed by Yu Qiancho. Damn it. Hong Tai Long still had a shocked expression on his face as he glanced left and right before following behind them. Yu Qiancho curled his lips in disdain and looked at the dense fog forest again. What do we do now? The huge clamshell closed up, Hong Tai Long looked at the 7-colored in the netherworld with a perplexed expression. When a few of them came out of the clamshell again, he said decisively, they had already arrived at the cliff within the boundary of all heaven. I'll destroy the immortal ascension stage and naturally cut off the connection between the immortal world and the human world. Taishu Xian seemed a little excited to return to this place. Smoke. He didn't greet the crowd and immediately flew in the direction of his hand and the two of them disappeared. Yu Qiancho took out a flying shuttle and let Hong Tai Long drive it. In the golden square.
He brought along Zhou Yu,
The moment
and
Hong
caught up with
landed on the ground
in the blink of an eye.
He scanned his surroundings.
They carried her and
Then
quickly disappeared
a red light
into the
erupted
distance
from his body
when they
and
arrived
soared
at
into
the
the
small
sky.
courtyard on the monster-like mountain.
His astonishing
Tai
aura
Shu
forced
Xian
Yu
couldn't wait any longer and far away to observe. White-haired Grandma Yen walked out of the house and saw her. A resounding and vigorous dragon roar called out with a trembling voice, shaking the entire basin and the golden plaza. Tai Shu Xian quickly walked over and knelt down on the spot. The surroundings began to surge. She hugged Grandma Yen's leg
After the
and
red
cried,
light
that pierced through the heavens and the earth vanished.
Xian,
A 200-jong long red dragon
After Grandma
stretched out
Yen
its
helped her
claws
up and checked on her.
Its
The two of them
imposing aura
hugged
was
each other and
unstoppable.
cried.
After
As
its
they
body,
cried,
which
they
was
asked
covered
each
in
other
red
something
scales,
and completely
curled up
ignored
the
the
three
three
people
people
who walked
The
in after
arrogant
them.
dragon shows remorse
After
suddenly
a long
raised
while,
a gust of wind
the two
and
women
plunged
who
down.
looked like a grandparent and granddaughter
Boom.
finally stopped crying.
The
altar in the center of the
When
golden
Grandma
plaza
Yen
was
saw
smashed
Yu
deep into the
Qianqiu,
ground. She wiped her tears
Then
and let go
the
of Tai
huge
Shu
red
Xian.
dragon
rapidly circled
She
around
walked
the
to
huge
him and
basin.
bowed. Yu Qianqiu.
The huge dragon's fangs
This old
opened
woman
its mouth
thanks
and
you.
sucked in crazily. She was thanking him for
All the
bringing
gold
back Tai
bricks,
Shu
gold
Xian, who had
nuggets,
disappeared
gold
for so
pillars,
many years,
and
other gold objects on the
You
golden
can't do
plaza
that.
were sucked into its stomach
Yu
in just a short while.
hurriedly held her.
The entire
Grandma
dazzling
Yen
golden
didn't
plaza
stand on
immediately
ceremony.
became a scene of devastation.
She pulled his hand and led him
Then
into the house.
The huge red dragon shook
She
its
then
head
waved
and
at
tail
the other
lightning
two people
speed,
and said,
crazily
"Come in,
crashing into
come
the
in,
surrounding
come
mountains
in,
and basins.
everyone come in."
Rumble. Grandma Yen, you don't
Amidst
have to
the
be
rumbling
so polite.
sounds,
Yu Qianqiu
Yu
sucked in a
Qianqiu
breath of
persuaded
cold
her
air
and
and
said
quickly
seriously,
dodged to the
"I
sky
still have
to
something
observe
to
the
do,
situation,
so I won't disturb you this
He
time."
saw that the huge basin
I'll
below
visit
had
Grandma
completely
next
collapsed
time.
in just a moment's time.
He
suddenly thought of something
Everything
and asked
had been razed
respectfully,
to the ground.
by the way. The
Grandma,
rainbow-colored fog
have you
that
heard
had
any
gathered in
news
the
about my
surroundings
master
had also
recently?
lost its restraints and
Hong
started to
Tailong's
disperse
ears
with the
pricked
wind.
up.
He looked at
Ew.
Yu Qianqiu with a stunned
dragon
expression
roared
and
once
pondered
again.
in his heart. The huge
Could
red
this guy's
dragon
master
soared
be
into
in
the
the sky
mausoleum
and
and
looked
looked
down
down
at
at the
the
vast land. Your master. Looking at the huge
Grandma
dragon
Yen
beside
was
him with
also
its four
stunned.
claws wide open and
Then
its long
she
body
came to a
wriggling with the
sudden
sound of wind
realization
and
and
thunder.
said,
Yu
"You're asking
Qianqiu
about
was
that
so
green
excited
robed
that he
madman,
actually dodged
right?"
and stood on the huge
Ah.
dragon's ferocious head. Yu Qianqiu's expression
stood
twitched.
between
the two antlers with his
The
hands
so-called
clasped
green-robed
behind his
madman
back. Shouldn't be anyone else.
A
feeling of arrogance welled
He
up
then
in
coughed
him. dryly and said,
The huge
"From what
dragon's
Grandma
red
said,
eyes
you
turned to
seem
look
to
at
have
him."
news about my master." It did not show any displeasure.
Grandma Yen
also felt that her choice
Instead,
of words
it
was a
said
little
in a deep
inappropriate,
rumbling voice,
but she still
"You have the
frowned
star
and nodded
bead.
with a solemn expression.
Are you afraid of the
soul-transforming
smoke?
I do know, but you must
No.
not let the others here know
Yu
that he is your
Qianqiu
master."
shook his
head forcefully. Otherwise,
Then
I'm afraid it
stand
will bring you
still.
trouble. I'm going to
Yu
take this
Qianqiu's
soul-transforming
expression
twitched
smoke.
again. I can't let it wreak havoc on the world. He guessed that the
Ew.
old man had done something that
The
angered
dragon
the heavens
roared
and the
angrily in
people
the
again.
sky.
The
So,
huge red
he asked
scales on its
weakly,
body
"Grandma,
slightly opened
can you
up.
explain it clearly?
Its aura surged
What
up and down
exactly
its
happened?"
body. Suddenly, the wind and clouds
Grandma
surged.
Yen
sighed and shook her head.
The
huge dragon opened
She
its
said,
fangs and
"Your
swooped
master
down.
killed
old man Mang." The vast land was
That's
suddenly
not all.
swept up by a gust of wind.
He
provoked the other tomb guards
strong
one after
suction
another.
force
carried the rainbow-colored
As a result,
fog into the
many
huge
of them were
dragon's
angered by
mouth
him.
like a rainbow. So,
More
more
than
than
100
100
of them
dragons
joined
soared into the
forces
sky
and
and
finally
danced
beat him
around
up until he was
chasing
seriously
after the
injured.
scattered rainbow-colored fog.
Who knew that after he escaped
After
into the
sweeping
boundary
away
of
all the
heavens to
rainbow-colored
recuperate,
fog,
he would
the
not
huge
stop.
dragon shook its head and
After
waved
he
its
came
tail
out,
as it
he
soared
killed
into the
60
sky.
to
70 minor god-level cultivators in a row.
After
circling around its surroundings
Dozens of them
once,
were
seriously injured and luckily
Another
escaped with
resounding
their dragon
lives.
roar shook the heavens
In
and
the
the
end,
earth. A tomb guard with
without
the
any
cultivation of an early stage
it
great
directly
god was
rode the
alarmed.
wind
and climbed the clouds.
He and your master
flying
fought
across the
fiercely
sky
for a
towards
day
the
and a
horizon.
night.
In
Dragon's
the end,
roar
the
of the
two
nine
of them were
heavens
evenly
changes.
matched. Hong
Both of them
Tai-long
were
might have been
seriously
trapped
injured
underground
and had
for
to
a long
retreat.
time. Your
It
master
had been a
has
long
not come out
time
to cause
since he
trouble
indulged
for a long
himself in the
time.
sky.
He has been
From time to
recuperating in the
time,
boundary
he
of
would let
heavens.
out a
deafening roar to vent
Although
his emotions.
everyone can see him,
they
Yu
can't break into
Qianqiu
the boundary
expressed
of
his
heavens.
understanding.
So
He did not
they
stop
can't
Hong
do anything to
Tai-long
him and allowed him to soar into
Yu
the
Qianqiu
sky. Was speechless for a
Meanwhile,
while. He was also
he
enjoying the
realized that the
legendary
old
feeling
man
of
was
riding
getting
a
more
dragon.
and more
reckless. No matter how
He
fierce
dared
the
to
wind
challenge
blew
against
against him,
him.
god-level
His green
experts
robe
alone
fluttered
in the sky. Was it fun to be
He
seriously
felt that his
injured
life
for
was
no
not
reason?
in vain.
It was simply
However,
unreasonable.
it was, after all,
The
a
others
huge
were also
fellow
speechless.
flying in the sky. After the shock,
coupled with Hong Tai
Shu's
Long's deafening
deafening
roars
roars
from time to time, It was hard for the
what he
mortals
was
on the
thinking.
ground not to notice it.
Shin Yu seemed to have heard of this before.
No one could see the tiny
He was
Yu Qianqiu
speechless.
standing on the dragon's head.
Hong Tai-long looked at Yu Qianqiu
what's that
as
in the
if he was
sky?
looking at a monster.
Divine dragon.
Never in his dreams would he have thought that Yu Qianqiu
had such an awesome
It's a divine
master.
dragon. Grandma Yan
Everyone
paused for a while
it's a
and
divine
smiled
dragon.
bitterly.
Passing through the borders
people
of
in the
Huaxia,
cemetery of the god
the mortals
of
on the
tombs are in a
ground
state
raised
of
their
panic
heads and
because
pointed
of your
at the
master.
sky.
No one
Everyone
knows
who could
when he will
walk
come out
rushed out of their
trouble
houses
again.
or onto the streets.
Everyone
pointing
is
at the
spreading the
sky,
news,
hoping to unite to deal with your master.
seemed to enjoy the feeling of being the center of
Sigh.
attention and admiration
Back then,
again.
if it wasn't for last
It was
Xian
as if
who
he had
divined
found
for
the
me and
supreme
told me
glory
not
that
to get
belonged
involved
to
in
the
the
dragon
matters
race.
outside.
I'm afraid
He
I wouldn't have been
intentionally
able to
slowed down
escape
his
from your
flying
master's
speed
hands.
and roared even more frequently.
I just don't
as if he
understand.
was afraid that others could not see
What
him.
is your master trying to do?
When he saw a city with
Everyone
many people,
here is a group
he
of
would even
people who
fly
stand
a few
aloof
rounds
from
in the
worldly
sky to show
affairs.
off, flying
Why would
towards
he
the
want to
most
disturb
crowded
the peace
places.
here?
No one is
Qianqiu did not
provoking
know
him.
whether to laugh or cry.
That, hee.
This Hong Tai-long was
Qianqiu
old,
blushed
but
with
he was
shame.
still a flirtatious dragon.
Finally, he gritted
If he
his
had
teeth
known
and
earlier,
said,
there's
he would have
something wrong
dragged
with
some
the old
people to
man's
see
head.
the scene of him being imprisoned.
Don't lower yourself to his level.
In the sky above Huaxiao's
Grandma Yan
capital
immediately
city,
said
a few
angrily,
dragon roars
who wants
shook
to
the
lower
entire
themselves
city.
to his level.
In the blink
We
of an
really
eye,
don't want
the
to lower
streets were
ourselves
filled
to
with
his
people,
level,
pointing
and we
at the
can't
dragon
wait to stay
flying in
away
the
from him.
sky. But
Endless
endless
sounds of
coming to our
astonishment
door,
and commotion
we
rose
can't
and
leave the
fell.
cemetery of the god of
In
tombs.
the palace,
What do you want us
and
to
the
do?
officials were discussing matters
Yu
when they
Qianqiu
suddenly heard
also
the shocking
smiled
dragon
bitterly.
roar.
Another guard ran over to report that there
The
was a
old
dragon
man was
flying
still
in the
resolutely
sky.
striving for a higher
Shi
and stronger
Wingguang
goal.
and the officials immediately
It
ran
seemed
out
that
to
he had
watch
never
the
wavered
commotion.
in that thought.
The imperial
Yu
concubines
Qianqiu
of the
didn't know what
imperial
to say.
concubines also stood outside
Seeing that the
and looked up
atmosphere
at the
was a little
sky.
awkward,
In
Taishu
the
Xian
imperial
immediately
preceptor
came forward
Yongzhen's
to resolve
residence.
it.
A stream of light
Grandma,
shot into the sky.
I want to pay my respects to
Xiao
father
Tian
and
stood
grandfather
tall in the
moon
sky,
god.
looking at the dragon
Grandma
flying
Yan
in circles
glanced
in
at
front
her
of him
and
understood what she was
Other
thinking.
than shock,
He was
she
also
didn't linger
high
on this
alert.
topic anymore.
He vaguely realized
shook her
that there
head
was
and
someone
walked out
standing
with
on
the
the
help of
dragon's
Taishu
head.
Xian.
Ahem. When Hong Tai-long's
Since they
vanity
are
was
elders,
satisfied
I should
and he
pay my
left,
respects.
Xiao Tian suddenly
Yu
realized
Qianqiu
that the
followed
person
out with
riding on
some
the
guilt.
dragon was actually Yu Qianqiu.
Then,
He cursed in his
Yu
heart.
Qianqiu,
who was
damn
standing
it.
with his hands behind his
I
back,
didn't do the wicked
also
things that
noticed
the
him.
old man did.
He nodded at him
Why
and
should I feel
smiled.
guilty?
The dragon
Hong Tai-long
instantly flew
and Shin
past
Yu
the
looked at each
petrified
other and
Xiao
followed
Tian.
out.
In front of the tombs of
Xiao
Taishu
Tian
Zhang
was
and
startled
the moon
awake
god,
by the strong
Taishu
wind and
Xian
immediately
knelt down
shouted,
and cowed out
"Boss."
sincerely. He
He
quickly
was
even
even
muttering
after him.
something.
Yu
Qianqiu turned to
bowed
look at him and
repeatedly
waved
to the
his hand with a
tombstones.
warm smile,
Shin Yu
indicating for him
followed
to go
suit.
back. Hong
He then
Tai-long
turned back
crossed
and
his
scolded
arms and
softly.
followed suit. Hong Tai-long.
Taishu Jing
Have
didn't
you
know
had
who
enough
it
of being
was.
coquettish? When he saw the
If
tomb
someone
of the moon
familiar
god,
sees you,
he muttered,
they would think
so
that
the
I
moon
like to
god
show
is
off.
buried here too.
I've only come out
Grandma
for a breath
Yan
of
saw
fresh
that he
air
was being
after over
disrespectful
100,000
and naturally
years.
couldn't stand it.
I've lost my
But when she
composure.
realized that she couldn't see
Please
through his
forgive me.
cultivation, she couldn't
Hong
help but
Tai-long
mock.
chuckled.
Do you know my husband? With a shake of his
Ha.
body, he quickly
Hong
adjusted his
Tai-long
direction
turned
and
around and
increased
was
his
stunned.
speed, flying straight
After
for the
he
demon
reacted,
region. He said
How
disapprovingly,
could Shi
the
Xiao
moon
Tian
god
catch up to Hong Tai-long's
I heard of
flying
him when I
speed?
was in the divine realm.
Seeing
Yu Qianqiu riding the
are.
dragon into the horizon,
Ha.
he couldn't catch up no
Grandma
matter how
Yan
hard he
was
tried.
stunned.
A
She
feeling of
glanced at them and
helplessness
asked
welled
in
up in his
confusion,
heart as he
"You are
stopped
also
in the
from the
divine realm. His face
Why
was
haven't
filled
I
with
seen you
desolation.
before?
Never
May I
in
know
his
your name?
wildest dreams would he have
She
thought that
mistakenly
Boss would
thought
be
that
able to
Hong
ride a
Tai-long
dragon
was a
and
tomb
fly
guard in the
sky.
divine tomb cemetery.
Every time he saw Boss,
It's not strange
Boss
that you
would
haven't
give him a
seen me
surprise that
before.
made him envious.
Hong Tai-long
Boss's
revealed a
level
normal
was getting
expression
higher
and
and
said,
higher,
and
he was
Hong
falling
Tai-long,
further and further
am a
behind.
nobody in the dragon clan.
To be honest, the
I had
life
never
that
made a
Yu
name
Qianqiu
for
had
myself
displayed
in the
was the
divine
cultivation
realm.
life that Xiao
It's
Tian
normal
had
that we
yearned for a
haven't
long
seen each
time.
other.
Only
You.
by cultivating like this
You
could
are
one
from the
not
dragon
cultivate
clan.
in vain. Grandma
He had
Yan
always
looked at him in
desired
surprise,
this,
but it was
as
a
if she
pity that
couldn't
Boss
believe
did
it.
not bring him along.
Just as she
leaving
was
him
about
with
to
endless
ask again,
melancholy and
she
grief.
saw Hong Tai-long casually
However,
walking to the front of the
Xiao Tian
huge
was
grave mound.
inexperienced, so how could he
He know the dangers behind the crystals that formed the grave mound.
Little did he know that
it is said that as long as the corpse of the person buried in the blood jade red crystals is intact, his cultivation and corpse can be maintained. What they could not obtain was what they desired the most. The blood jade red crystals can absorb the essence of the moon and condense the beauty around them. Not long after the depressed the dead can be resurrected to the imperial preceptor. This is also the reason why people in the divine realm fight to be buried in the divine tomb cemetery.
He pulled
I wonder if it's
Xiao
true.
aside and asked anxiously,
Grandma
was that a
Yan was
divine
already
dragon
annoyed
flying
by
in the
his
sky
rude
just
behavior?
now? Yu
Was it a
Qianzhou
divine
glanced at
dragon?
her and quickly pulled
Did
Hong
he see
Tai Long
wrongly?
away to stop him from
The
carelessly
shock on his
touching the
face
grave
had yet to
mound.
fade.
He had purposely come over to seek confirmation.
Then,
He pulled Shen Yu along, and the three of them
sighed
bid
and
farewell
slowly
to
sat on
Grandma
the
spacious
Yan.
armchair. Grandma Yan
With a
nodded
desolate
unhappily.
smile,
He said,
she
didn't
yes.
say any polite words,
The
and
one
let
riding
the
the
three of them
divine
leave.
dragon was
You're
OL.
tuning into the LoveLore
Mr.
Library
Yu.
YouTube channel.
Ah.
We're so
It's Mr.
grateful
Yu.
for your support, and don't forget
Sherwin
to subscribe
exclaimed.
to join us on this incredible
His
journey
face
through
was filled
captivating
with envy
stories.
as he shook his head and sighed.
Your generosity through donations
After a long
truly
time,
makes a world
he
of difference,
said, riding
as
the
it's the
divine
primary
dragon to
source of
fly in
revenue
the
that allows
sky.
me to expand and
Mr.
enhance
Yu
this
is really
channel
a
for
godly
you.
person.
Thank you from the
Why
bottom
didn't
of
you
my
invite
heart
him
for being
over?
a part of this adventure.